All right. Welcome back to another episode of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I'm your host, Chad Everett Rocheers, again in some circles, apparently known as Seb. And who knows, maybe I'll switch it up. We'll pull that at another time. All right. So, what comes to mind to me, a friend of mine sharing something with me today about some things that happened recently. I'm sure that the majority of people that are going to watch this and think to themselves, this guy's got all kinds of opinions about all kinds of things. And you're right, I do. We seem to have a big issue that's going on, and we have a lot of pathology supporting going on in our country where we are encouraging victim mentalities in such a way that what's going to happen in the next 10 years, 20 years, even 50 years could be pretty daunting, to say the least. We spend time rewarding victims, and there's a true victim, and then there's the victim persona. I'm going to preface this because I'm going to share something pretty close to my heart, something that I hold very dear. I've shared some of it before, and little pieces here and there, but I'm going to share a story with you today that really motivates me. It's really motivated me for a lot. To become the best that I can possibly be, to make the biggest impact, to have my legacy be something that owns my time. What do I do with my day, and how do I treat the world overall? What do I want to see come out of everything? Okay, so today's episode is really talking about what motivates you, what's your why, what really drives you to want to make a difference, and or just build your future, let alone a future that other people will recognize. I've shared my story in a previous episode about my father. Most people aren't aware of how my father passed. He passed the same day that Steve Irwin did, actually. It's been several years now. The reason why I don't really meditate, or didn't meditate, I actually do different forms of meditation now. No longer is it the way that we were all kind of influenced to believe you meditate. There's multiple different ways, and I can do a series on that at another time. But I avoided it because I forgot the sound of my father's voice. It may not sound like a big deal, especially if you still have your parents alive, or maybe your father's still with you. May not sound like that big of a deal, but when it's no longer there and you can't reclaim it, it does something to you. It's pretty deep. That's not today's. That's a part of it. That's part of the totem pole of what I do, why I do it. My oldest brother is one of my reasons. I look at my why as a totem pole. Like most people that are familiar with totem poles know that there's different depictions that are represented as a head and a stack on, typically like with trees or things like that. And those heads have symbolism. There's a reason for each one of them. My oldest brother is named Adam, named after my father and my grandfather. He was born with cerebral palsy. For those that aren't familiar with cerebral palsy, it is a musculoskeletal and neurological type of condition that over time reduces the functionality of the muscle to the point that the individual can become bedridden. Average age for somebody that's with cerebral palsy, I believe, is between 25 and 30. My brother lived until he was, I believe it was 34 years old when he passed. He was bedridden nearly my entire life, but he represents the physical totem for me. Like, why did I exercise to such extents to accomplish specific physical feats that I was capable of? Not necessarily the strongest person in the bunch, but agility to strength can equate functionality. And I had a high degree of functionality and capable of doing multiple different exercise or physical feats that would impress other people, but it was really more to impress myself, and kind of did it for a cause that was more for my brother. He was not ever going to be able to do such things. And it wasn't anything other than I wanted to try to create a way for my brother to live vicariously through me. My youth, I wasn't necessarily the kindest to him. I was actually quite a little bit of a jackass towards my brother in adolescence, and finding myself in the process with my friends and family. I just didn't cater to his disability as much. He was home health care. He stayed home 24 hours a day, had 24-hour nursing assistants. He was stuck in defined. He was restrained to his bed. His life, it's not exactly the most fruitful experience. Although if that's all you have, then we did what we could to make a fruitful experience for him. My father showed him a special type of affection, the kind that, if you can imagine positioning yourself and having a disabled child, and what kind of affection and attention you would give that child to try to make up for their lacking certain things. And so he did, and I took note of it, and possibly some of the reasons why I acted out a little bit. I'm 1 in 6 boys, by the way. I'm the second youngest. So I know a few things, and one of those things is fighting, that's for sure. We didn't have cable, so we spent a lot of time staying entertained, and I stood out. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, had white hair as a kid, practically. And my brothers almost all have brown hair, brown eyes. But regardless, part of my why was from my brother Michael, or my brother Adam. Michael has his own pieces. I'm not really going to discuss those for the time being, but he's been a pivotal and important part of my life as well. Same as Jason. Not taking anything away from them with this, but more highlighting some of the things that have really pushed me to make a difference, to do something for society. The earlier stages were more me-centric, and I was very interested in doing things to find that level of self-satisfaction, like the exercises that I would do and the activities that I would do that would actually create this, physical prowess. I'm no longer in that shape, but it was interesting. I don't have a reason to be in that shape anymore. I'm not. That's not something that maintaining that isn't necessarily high on my priority list. But the bigger piece is what happened with my niece. My niece Kaylin is my youngest brother's daughter. She's a beautiful little girl. She had just turned 2 years old. My brother and the mother of the child, of Kaylin, they decided early in their relationship to have a child. And one of my youngest brother's greatest ambitions is to be a father, to be a very good father. And he is a very good father. But because of the separation at some point in time in the relationship, Tiffany had the mother of the child's name's Tiffany, of Kaylin, she had decided that she wanted to take a different route in the relationship. And it wasn't something that Craig wanted to support. It wasn't for him. So in that relationship, there was a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of control, using his daughter to control him. Whenever people say, well, mothers don't use their children for profitable gain or control and things like that, is speaking in absolutes. I would suggest no one look at that with an absolute mentality. Some people just want control over other people. Some people will have children for profit. There's all kinds of things. And then there's people that the relationships just didn't work out for one reason or another that are more understandable. And then there's this type of situation. My brother lost his daughter I lost my niece. It was a somewhat cold morning, and I received a phone call, and it was a complete shock. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I heard that my niece had passed the night before. They'd found her body in her bed. And it turns out that she had ingested a prescription medication that should not have been anywhere near her. I don't hold that necessarily against the mother as much as there's a maturity gap. There's a developmental missing piece that, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. DCF was often involved in the situation with my brother. They constantly treated him like a criminal. And I'm not biased in the sense of saying that Craig was in no way a criminal. Very, very loving, caring father. But the woman that had his child was very manipulative and aggressive in that stage of her life. Where she's at now as far as her development and all that, I don't know. We don't really stay in touch. But had somebody's addiction and somebody's missing pieces in maturity had not been present, had she actually developed, and both my brother and her had developed in all areas necessary to, or that would be desirable for being a very well-adjusted parent, they would have, I really feel that my niece would still be here, still be with us. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that my brother has any addictions like that. He actually doesn't. It's surprising. Overall, he doesn't even really care that much for drinking. So he's fairly straight-laced in that sense. It's other pieces, that developmentally, it's like there's my brother's greatest purpose is to, be a father and to be a good father and to provide for his family and to be a good standing human being that way. But there's other pieces, right? We all have areas that we don't necessarily have well developed, and it's not anybody to be made wrong. It's to shed the veil of ignorance, and put light of consciousness on things. Increase our awareness to things so that we can potentially create something that we can all really love. Something that we can all look back at and say we did our best, and really that best was amazing. That was something there, and on the same token, it kept me from wanting to do great harm to the mother and or their family. It prevented that for me because I could look at it from they're lacking something, and no, even though my heart was broken from it, and still to this day, it's enough to bring you to your knees. But to realize that you can sit back and make somebody wrong your whole life, or you can do something to try to make a change. Try to make something so great. It's like me talking about I could pick up the trash when I go into the bathroom, or go out on dates and pick up garbage, and take my dog out for a walk or whatever it is, just like trying to leave the world a better place than where I found it. There can be more. There's more opportunities, things that we can do to try to create that world that we want to live in, to really create the greatest utopia that we could all agree is a utopia, not this dystopia that we're trying to create by way of the ideas of a utopia. We're missing some pieces, and we're reinforcing some of the immature elements by creating this victim persona and reinforcing it by the reward sequences that we put out there. People do this in their personal relationships too, by coddling others and doing the rest of that. And I'm not saying don't ever bring attention and support to people in need, but understand when you're coddling versus giving care. And it's a fine line, and sometimes you'll never notice the difference if you don't really try to learn it. So I wanted to share this today because I do see that there's a great degree of issues that we can address, but part of the totem pole of my efforts, my why, is that it comes from this. With that, that's the end of this video, this episode. Thank you for watching. It's Chad Everbro shares the Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Share this video with people in your life that you know will help.